Next on the Californians.
I can't wait to take a bite out of this delicious mandarin walnut salad and this tasty avocado margarita made with delicious California avocados. Where'd you get those delicious avocados, Stuart? There's a fantastic farmer's market at the Grove. Just take Santa Monica Boulevard, take a right on Fairfax until you pass Beverly Boulevard. Hey Stuart, I got some bad news, man. Gavin Newsom? What are you doing here? Well, I'm getting recalled for governor of California, so I'm just telling everyone I'm Santa Claus so that I'll give them whatever money they want so they'll re-elect me. And what does that have to do with me, Gavin? Well, homelessness is out of control, homicide is peaking, California was one of the worst states to handle the pandemic, and taxes are higher than a meth head outside of Hunter Biden's home in Venice. I'm facing a real dilemma here, and I could use your help. And what do you propose I do? Go get some delicious California Pinot Noir and distribute it to the voters? That's exactly what I want you to do, Stuart, and tell them that my slick back hair is better than any Olympic decathlete who switched genders. I mean, I'm not transphobic, I'm just Republican-phobic. It's much better optics for virtue signaling. But bro, millions of people recalled you. I was down at the Coffee Bean at Olympic and Bundy, you know, where OJ did the big car chase, and they all said you suck, bro. Get out of here! You don't even know what you're talking about! Nobody goes to the west side on Olympic. You take the 101 to the 405 south to the 10, and you get off at Bundy. Well look guys, I really could use your help. This recall is hella more whack than I thought. And I don't even know if I can convince James Corden anymore, and he goes along with whatever I say. I don't know, man. I kinda like Caitlyn Jenner. And you don't even take me to the French Laundry, man! That is true, that was a mistake. But I only took lobbyists, and I didn't even wear a mask. Oopsie. Yeah, I like that place. You just take 5 north, to the 580 west, the 680 north, right up to Napa. Perfect directions, my man. How do you know where the French Laundry is?
The Californians, right now on SoapNet.
Welcome to the Beau Show. That little sketch that I just did is a spin on the very funny sketch The Californians from Saturday Night Live, one of their funnier sketches in the modern era. I wish that SNL would be more balanced in terms of its politics, because the sketch that I did would be fair game, but alas, they keep it pretty one-sided. But it is true, Gavin Newsom, of the governor of California, is facing a legitimate recall, the way that years ago, Gray Davis was recalled and replaced with Arnold Schwarzenegger. This election is at least the 54th attempt in California's history to recall a governor, and one of 7 efforts to remove Newsom. 7 efforts is quite a lot, which should say something about, well, Gavin Newsom's ineptitude. This recall election will be only the 4th governor recall election ever held in the United States. Recall efforts for local politicians in California have surged in the wake of the pandemic and the lockdown measures. California is one of only 19 states in this country that allow recall. And in order to begin the effort, you have to acquire signatures that total at least 12% of the amount of the votes cast in the last election. This current recall acquired that threshold, which was just shy of about 1.5 million signatures. The next step is to mail recall ballots to all registered voters. And they have to answer 2 questions: whether the incumbent Newsom should be recalled, and also which challenger should replace him. Now, let's get to the bones of all of this, which is why Newsom is being recalled in the first place. This is the 7th attempt to recall him, and that stems in large part due to California's universal health care, the laws they have protecting and helping illegal aliens, and also, of course, well, the rampant homelessness. Getting signatures for this recall was hard, because remember, with the pandemic, you can see how it might be pretty tough just to go door to door and collect signatures, especially with those tight lockdown measures. For the longest time, Newsom refused to even acknowledge that the petition was underway. And Democrat Secretary of State Rusty Hicks compared this recall effort, which he called a California coup, to the storming of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, which is of course pathetic. Collecting signatures as part of a legal, legitimate recall is not a coup. It is a rational democratic procedure. This actually drew bipartisan criticism, but Uncle Joe Biden didn't say anything other than he opposed the recall. Well, of course you do, Joe. Now go back to your one meeting per day on the presidential agenda. Now let's discuss that French Laundry dinner that I alluded to in the earlier skit. Some of you might not even be aware of it because, by and large, the media tries to prevent you from seeing bad things that Democrats do. In November of 2020, Newsom attended a birthday dinner at the very ritzy restaurant, the French Laundry in Napa Valley. There were certainly more than 3 households at this gathering, when his own proclamation at that time was a maximum of 3 households for Thanksgiving gathering, because right around that time. Also in attendance were the CEO and head lobbyist of the California Medical Association. This gathering, although, let's cut the BS and call it what it was, a party, was totally maskless. The restaurant staff had to close the area off with sliding doors because it got so loud, thus now making it an indoor party. This party might have been the tinderbox for this latest recall, but hell, California has some of the highest taxes in our country, a raging homelessness problem, high crime and violence, multi-billion-dollar fraud scandal at the state's unemployment agency, school and business closures, job losses, and then you add to it this hypocrisy of Newsom dining like a wild child in the middle of it all. So it's no wonder that this recall effort would happen. Yet, Newsom still sits at a little over half of Californians opposing this recall, indicating that he might survive it. The recall only needed about 1.5 million signatures, and the petitioners submitted 2.1 million signatures. But officials, after the counting and everything, ended up counting about 1.7 million signatures by the March deadline. The Democratic supermajority legislature has sensed some vulnerability, so they have approved $215 million to speed up the process and waive any electoral reviews to help Newsom avoid any fallout over fires, school reopenings, and other general California problems. In March of this year, facing the real possibility of this recall, Newsom issued a bunch of hasty edicts, leading to rushed reopenings and vaccine distribution. You can see why Newsom did this so quickly. He saw the tide turning and voila, he began reopening the state. Some of the latest polling shows that if a recall were held immediately today, 56% of voters would oppose it. But another poll shows that 58% of voters would like a new governor for 2022. That doesn't look so good for Gavin. But in May, Newsom announced a $100 billion spending bill, hence my reference earlier to being Santa Claus, to take the heat off of this recall. Remember that California received $26 billion in federal aid, in large part due to its size and its mismanagement of the pandemic. Other fiscally responsible states that didn't kill off all their businesses, like Florida for instance, didn't require this money. And so Biden ended up doing the socialist thing, which is giving money to those who didn't perform well. Now, Gavin Newsom's wife Jennifer has a nonprofit that received over $800,000 in donations from companies that lobbied or did business with the California government. Conflict of interest much? I think she just took a page out of Maxine Waters' book, who's been profiting off of her congressional position for many, many years. And Californians just look the other way. I mean, does no one pay attention to this stuff? Now, it's clear that Newsom is a bit nervous, because if any other Democrat adds to this ballot, it could split the vote, which is exactly what happened in 2003, electing the governor, Arnold. So they are trying to find loopholes, such as preventing other Democrats on the ballot or saying Newsom should resign so that the lieutenant governor can become governor. But it seems that Democrats are fed up with Newsom too and want some other names on the ballot. But the problem is that California is a different state politically than it was in 2003. It's not just liberal, it's hyper-liberal. Many Republicans have exited states like California for greener, lower tax pastures. So that has enabled the state to be freely run solely by Democrats. In May, when the CDC dropped its mask requirements for fully vaccinated people, Newsom extended his mask mandate for another month. What's up with that? Scientists criticized this move, saying that Newsom was not following the science and could potentially cause harm. Well, we know it has already caused harm. Look at businesses and look at the mental health of our population. What is sad is that Newsom may have kept this mandate because mask mandates are, wait for it, popular with Cali Democrats. So this effort may have been a political play to keep Democrats happy and united under Gavin Newsom. Now, imagine that. The CDC is saying vaccinated people no longer need masks, and those who get the vaccine have been dying for this news. And your governor tells you no, don't listen to the CDC, we're going to keep your masks on longer. Even if you were a Democrat who's vaccinated, wouldn't you be upset with this? All those Karens who have been yelling at people for not wearing your masks, aren't you ready to burn your mask right now? Why would you be happy about Newsom extending the mandate when it's contrary to CDC guidelines? So Newsom, in facing this recall, may have done something so unscientific and so brazenly stupid just to appease his base so that he can survive the recall. And for all those Democrats who want to follow the science and try to use that as their signature burn, where's your logic? You've lost the war. Now, let's follow the money in all this. Who has donated to help Newsom fight off this recall effort? Well, how about Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix? Billionaire farmer Stuart Resnick, CEO of the Wonderful brand, you know, those funky-shaped pomegranate palm drinks. Some other ones are some Silicon Valley billionaires, meaning big tech, of course. Steven Spielberg, George Soros, wow, that's a shocker. Jeffrey Katzenberg, always faithful to the Democrats, and J.J. Abrams, to name a few. These are all the French Laundry crowd, the ones that just step around the homeless when they're going to a restaurant, but want to help the effort. I don't see them opening up their estates. So now let's look at the challengers. And in the Democratic corner, we have John R. Drake, an ice skating coach. Anthony Fanara, a restaurant owner. Louis Huang, a candidate in the 2020 Irvine mayoral election. Tor Leonard, Jeremy Lupoli, Kevin Pathrath, a YouTuber, real estate broker and landlord. Ronald J. Palmieri, a gay rights activist. Armando Perez Serrato, business owner. Joel Ventrasca, who's a perennial candidate, including in the San Francisco mayoral elections. And Frank Henry Wade, accountant. And in the Republican corner, we've got Kevin Falconer, former mayor of San Diego. Caitlyn Jenner, you know who she is. Businessman John Cox and former Rep. John Oss. Now, Cox and Falconer seem to be the top contenders at the moment. But now, how about some of the wild cards? Billboard model Angeline is running, as well as former porn actress Mary Carey. Former mayor of LA Anthony Villaraigosa might jump in. Actor Randy Quaid has expressed some interest. And former U.S. Ambassador Rick Grinnell has also expressed some interest and has been heavily lobbied to run. But his name is not yet in the hat. No doubt he'd give Newsom a certain run for his money. So those are the contenders, and I think it's all really up in the air at this point. Newsom may not be able to solidify his party behind him, especially if there are challengers. California always has a lot of challengers on their ballot because it's just such a weird state. I used to live there. Where else can you get a YouTuber and a porn star on the same ballot? But Californians have a lot to think about, other than their Napa wine. They have to think about taxes, immigration, sanctuary cities, insane homelessness, gas prices, roads and traffic, infrastructure, earthquakes, and the way they want their government to work. I don't think Sacramento works for Californians. I think it actually works against Californians. They just don't get any return on their investment. The government is more concerned with the rights and aims of immigrants than it is its own citizens. Oakland and San Fran are nightmares. Venice has become the wild, wild west of tent cities. It really is a liberal's haven. It's the elite dining at the French Laundry, while the vast majority of people, let's say the middle class, suffer under bad policies. Because the poor get the help they need. They get anything, pot, assistance, and really the ability to sleep wherever they want. This is what is so insidious about socialist big government type leadership. It's the law-abiding, tax-paying citizen who does his or her part in just getting by that gets saddled with all this burden. It's not the top 1%. They evade taxes and they get to do all the elite things. The bottom percentile is living, well, in oblivion. They get paid to do nothing. And then it's that middle class area that subsidizes all of this. They suffer. People like Elon Musk, they've moved out. Many are exiting, which leaves one party in control over the state. I'll be a bit amazed if a Republican could win this recall. It's not impossible, but I think it's a stretch because Democrats in California stick to their guns. Well, okay, they don't like guns, but they're perfectly willing to let gangs have them. But they stick together. They mobilize and they keep their party in power, even if it's an incompetent person. They value party over competence. which seems illogical because it is. Otherwise, you don't get a multi-term Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi. Oddly enough, the Republican minority leader in Congress is Kevin McCarthy from California. He's always on TV, and he does a pretty good job of presenting the opposition to Democrat policies in a fairly logical and calm way. I still think the GOP needs some fresh faces and voices, and thankfully, with Liz Cheney now ousted from leadership, we can see what someone like Elise Stefanik can bring to the table. It's time to win the war of ideas. This Newsom recall is interesting because it's the 7th effort. California Republicans, Libertarians, Independents, and even some Democrats are all in on this. And if they really want new leadership, let's see what they can come up with. If they end up re-electing Newsom, you have to ask yourself, was this cause in vain? Because why collect the signatures if you can't remove the guy? Newsom has proven his ineptitude and his shortcomings. If Californians think he's the right leader and keep re-electing him, well, the state is doomed. It's a place for exit right now, not entry. And it's also a testament that some of the big Hollywood types are all in to keep Newsom in power. These are the same folks that cry for more taxes and the wealthy to pay their fair share, but yet they never seem to volunteer their own income and wealth. Isn't that interesting? It's always do as I say, not as I do. It's hypocrisy. It's partying at the French Laundry while telling the rest of the state to not have family gatherings. It's getting your hair done in San Francisco like Nancy Pelosi while telling other salons they must stay closed and lose revenue. It's impeaching a president for words like Maxine Waters did to Donald Trump and then inciting violence at Derek Chauvin's trial. It's total Californication. And no other state, at least the red ones, want their rejects. You've seen the shirts that say, "Don't California my Texas," or "Don't California my Florida." We know people are moving to those tax-friendly states. And residents don't want those liberal voters moving in and changing the prosperity they have. This is a battle of ideas, not just of states. When the voters migrate, so do the ideas. And that's where you have to be careful. Ideological migration is a real thing. And if you don't believe me, look at Georgia. It pretty much got infiltrated with Democrats. Texas, too, is changing. Austin, well, it's always been liberal. But with some of the Democrat elites migrating from California, we are seeing some shifts in the political dynamics there. Isn't it interesting, though, that the blue states are the ones people are leaving and the red states are the ones gaining residents? I wonder why. Any governor that has had 7 recall attempts pretty much deserves recall. And if Californians don't get it right and vote this guy in again, well, what can we say? They've opted for more of the same. I'm Beau, and that's the show.